From the 22 News Plus studio, this is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of InFocus. I'm your host, Patrick Berry. We're here in the 22 News Plus studios. There's a lot going on at the State House out in Boston. I'm very happy today to be joined across the desk by Massachusetts State Representative from the 4th Hampden District, Kelly Pease. Kelly, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you giving me some of your time.
Thank you for having me.
There is a lot going on at the State House. One of the biggest things right now as we sit in, the early part of 2026, Governor Healy came out with her latest budget. You are a Republican. What's your take on it?
Well, again, I mean, it's a good starting mark, but there's things that need to be more. I mean, like a few things that I like. She left the extra 100 million into the Chapter 90 money that the legislature put in last year, right? Because that was huge for cities and towns, and that extra 100 was dealt out by road miles, which helps us in Western Massachusetts. So that's still there, and hopefully maybe even when it comes through the House, we can even bump that up some more because, when you look at the fair share, which is a big piece of it nowadays, with the half supposed to go to education, the other half to transportation, but the MBTA sucks the big half of that out of there. So we need to try to get a little bit more equitable.
You talk about the MBTA. There was a point where I'm checking my notes. She took a little more than $1 billion from the voter-approved surtax on high earners to support the MBTA. I've been torn on that concept because we out here in Western Mass don't reap the benefits of the MBTA. Right. However, it was pointed out to me that if the MBTA is up and running properly, the eastern end of the state economy is running properly, which then does help us out here. So it's sort of that we don't see the benefits like day to day, but a good running MBTA is, I think, good.
It's good for the state. Exactly. No, I totally agree with you. But
taking that money from that surtax, that's a tough one.
Well, I mean, they don't take it all, but again, they've been given the lion's share, right? Especially with the supplemental budgets that come through because they've taken in more than they projected, which I do like that they tend to be a little more conservative in their fiscal outlooks. So we have a lot of supplemental budgets that we're able to pass later on. But you're right. The MBTA, you need a strong system in there because you bring people in and it will migrate over to Western Mass as well. But more importantly, if the state's doing good, then it helps us.
It's funny. There have been some reports out so far in 2026 about the outward migration out of Massachusetts. And and my daughter lives in the Boston area. And she can't stand the MBTA because it's not reliable. Right. So what does she do? She drives to work. Yeah. Which is what you don't want to have happen. But I wonder if a poor running MBTA isn't part of the reason why people are leaving the eastern end of the state because it's unreliable.
I'm not sure. And that is one of the reasons they sunk a lot of money last year into it to try to get it turned around. And they've been sinking a lot of money into it. And I think this is another year where they're kind of got a focus on it. And hopefully Phil, the new Secretary of DOT, who was brought in just to do the MBTA, but now he oversees the whole thing. But I'm sure his focus is still MBTA. Hopefully, he's going to get it turned around, up and running. So they say that the stalls and the shutdowns are getting fewer and they're getting more reliable. So maybe then your daughter will end up using it.
Exactly. One note I saw was, I think it was from 2015 to 2021. The Fiscal and Management Control Board, which oversaw the MBTA. Do you think you've been in office long enough to kind of overlap with that board. Do you think we should reinstitute that board? Or is the new commissioner, is he doing a good enough job where?
I don't know. I think we got to give him time. I mean, I think we got to give him time. And he understands about the regional aspects too, because, he came out of New York.
So he understands one of the biggest.
Right. The subway systems and people always say, how come, America, you don't have a system like in Europe, and it's like, well, they got to rebuild after World War II. We didn't. So we got 200-year-old systems. So, or whatever.
But it's funny. There's a huge movement, and we know it living in Westfield, converting old rail trails or old rail lines to linear parks, which I love. The one in
Oh, yeah.
Westfield that goes, Southwick and so forth. But there's this whole movement of east-west rail. It's like, all right, well, do you take some of those old rail lines and put them back to commuter rails or something
Yeah.
like that?
I think I've gone down that road that's not going to be able to happen. But
Right.
and you're right. I love the rail trails. I mean, a lot of people say we're putting money into it, but you go on those rail trails, especially
Fantastic.
there's people on there all the time. My wife loves it. She runs and bikes on it. It's
And you take the kids out there,
yeah,
too.
that's right.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about traffic. You just go.
So, getting off MBTA for a bit, what are some of the other things that the governor's budget had in there that you and maybe some of your fellow Republicans are just kind of like, it's all smoke and mirrors, or maybe not smoke and mirrors, but it's not going to happen.
Well, I
just
mean,
wishful thinking.
like keep her budget low, just like at education. I mean, she did a lot this year to it, but again, she reverts back to $75 per pupil, which it was 150 in the final budget last year. But
Wow.
and again, that's good. But one of the things that we got to take a hard look at across the board in the state is the education, because
Absolutely.
these schools are getting killed. I mean, there's been more overrides throughout the state probably, and I don't know how long. And most of them don't pass because people can't take the higher taxes anymore.
Right.
But that means services are being cut, especially in these rural schools. Like now I have Hampshire Regional School, having Southampton being the biggest contributor there, and their elementary school over there, they're losing positions because they can't afford them. Because
Wow.
yeah,
I've heard rural schools are having a very difficult
right,
time.
and we better address that. Now she did put in rural school aid, and she increased that up to 20 million. So hopefully that'll help a little bit. I'm not sure how far that'll go, and then the other bigger things with any school like Westfield is the special ed circuit breaker. And she did focus
Special
on that.
ed is rising
It's huge.
dramatically in every district.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have one student in Westfield, I believe the superintendent was telling me that they have to pay $250,000 a year to transport to Boston every day.
$250,000 a year for one student.
One student. So it's and this is supposed to be, it was promised that it would be reimbursed 100%, just like the transportation cost and everything. So I like some of the things she did in here, and I'm hoping we can improve it, because the Student Opportunity Act was a good thing, but it's ended up not being a good thing, because if your population goes down, you get held harmless, which means you don't get cuts, but you stay flat funded, which
Right.
means you get cut because your insurance, your
Everything else is going up.
utilities, and everything's going up.
Right.
So that means your programs are getting cut. So it's not a system that's working for us. We need to relook the whole formula, relook how we're doing business with the schools, because that's what's driving our property taxes
Right.
more than anything
Right.
at the local level.
We are up on our first commercial break. Stay with us. We've got plenty more to talk about when it comes to what's happening in our state with State Representative Kelly Pease. We're back in a moment.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of In Focus. I'm your host, Patrick Berry. Sitting across the desk from me, representing the 4th Hampden District, is Massachusetts State Representative Kelly Pease. Mr. Pease, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you.
When we left off, we were talking about the budget that Governor Healy presented not too long ago, and Representative Pease, you're a Republican. You're in the minority, unfortunately, in this state. We talked about some of the key things, but there have been federal cuts.
Yes.
To our state, which, right to SNAP benefits, Medicaid benefits, Medicaid or Medicare, can't remember which one it was. That hurts. I mean, how do you as a Republican react to our president, who's a Republican, making cuts to our home state?
Well, first of all, the only cuts are to people who are here illegally. But the problem with that is that they're going to still show up at the hospital, and you're going to have to subsidize the hospital for taking care of these folks. So the Medicaid piece will have to probably come out of state, but the federal government says, no, we're not going to take care of people that aren't here legally. That's what our tax dollars are going to go to pay for. So
what's the expectation, that our hospitals and doctors just turn these people away?
I don't think that's the expectation. I think they're hoping to just disincentivize the folks from not only coming here, but even staying here. Because right now, obviously, they have incentives for people who are here illegally to say, we'll give you like $3,000 on a plane ticket back to wherever you want to go. And you have the right to come back to the country, where if we deport you, you're not allowed to ever come back to the country legally. So, so they're trying to, I think, just stem the whatever 10, 20 million that came in over the last 4 years under the last administration, and try to just get that under control. I mean, you think about, if it's 20 million, that's almost 3 times the population of the state of Massachusetts that came into the country. That changes your whole dynamics. But more importantly, getting rid of, and I don't need to go down the road of immigration, but obviously focusing on the criminal aspect first, and not just the mom and pops that have been here for a while.
And I think that's, a crucial element to just to point out, sidetrack a little bit, is targeting criminals, immigrant criminals, I think is a great thing.
Yep.
The mom and dads or the kids who are here going to school or whatever, that's foolish.
Right. And I think that's what we got to do. And I try to, and in Minnesota, I mean, so I'll talk ICE for a minute, okay? Because you kind of have to in this day and age, I think. Right? Minnesota was an outlier because ICE has been in a lot of cities and states across the country, and the only one you heard about in Minnesota is because they pushed back. They didn't want to cooperate, whatever. And then at the end, they realized we need to cooperate, right? Because that'll get ICE out of here. So if you have your local police just keeping the crowd control, let them go do their business or hand over criminals so they don't even have to go into a community, then that's good. Because unfortunately, when ICE goes in a community, they find a bad guy. If somebody's there next to them and they're also illegal, they're going to get picked up because that's their job. That's they got to take it. If you're not documented, then you will be arrested.
But just because you're undocumented, that's a misdemeanor. It's not but that's why
Yep.
We're going down a whole separate path. But the federal cuts to our state impact how you govern.
Yes.
Westfield and and the rest of your district.
Right. No, absolutely. It's going to be tough. And matter of fact, we've had conversations with Bay State, about they're going to be maybe struggling if they don't get some reimbursement from the state to help with the current situation, because again, these people are still going to come and get the services or get the health care they need.
Somebody needs to pay for that.
Right. And it's not going to be the federal government, obviously, anymore. So
switching gears a little bit, one of the biggest issues, I think, at the State House is the state auditor position. In the election of November 2024, 70+% of Massachusetts voters voted to have the state auditor audit the state.
Right.
Okay. It's inside baseball for you. Why hasn't that happened? Is there a reason is there a legal reason why this hasn't happened?
Well, first of all, I got to say I support the audit, all right? Because if I don't say that, I'll get a ton of emails or Facebook posts saying,
what are you doing? I mean, if 70% of the population voters want that,
then first of all, and if it wasn't something legal, all the ballot questions are supposed to be approved by the Attorney General. Why did she allow it to go on the ballot? Right. So that's one point. But the other thing is that the legislature thinks that it's a separation of power. The auditor sits on more the executive side of the House, and they're in the legislative side. So they have no right. And I use the analogy like, okay, let's say President Trump. We have a Democratic Congress, and he says, I need to audit you. Well, he has no authority to do that because they're a separate branch. Matter of fact, they're listed before the executive branch in the Constitution. So they're pushed back because of that. And so it needs to go up to the Judicial Supreme Court, Massachusetts, to say, yes, the people voted for this. It needs to be done because it can be done. Or no, it can't be done because it's not constitutional in our state. And that's what we need to find out.
So it really comes down to legality. Is
I think so. I think that's.
You brought up a very good point. If the Attorney General allowed it on the ballot, why is there a legal question? We don't know.
Right. And since she did allow it why didn't she support taking it to the Supreme Judicial Court to get a ruling on it to say can they do it or not?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we are up on our second commercial break. We've got plenty more to talk about with State Representative Kelly Pease, so stay with us. We're back in just a moment.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry. This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this discussion on today's In Focus. Sitting across the desk from me, representing the 4th Hampden District of Massachusetts, is its State Representative, Kelly Pease. Mr. Pease, thank you again for joining me. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
2026 is an election year. You are up for re-election. See, I'm going to put you on the spot. Are you running again?
I am.
You are going to run again.
I pulled my nomination papers on last week when they came out on Tuesday.
Okay.
So I got to get my signatures to get on the ballot. People always say, "You got to get signatures. You're coming." I said, "Yeah, no matter what, you got to get your signatures to say I want to do it." So,
Okay.
I'd like to. I think I'd like to try to do this for a couple more terms to see if.
And what year were you first elected?
2020. So 21 is when I took office. So this is my 3rd term.
How's it been?
It's been good. I mean, I'm a people person, and I like trying to fight for more money. I mean, again, to me, it doesn't matter that you're so much a Republican or Democrat when you're down. I mean, it does, but it doesn't, because I fight for more money for roads, schools, clean water, and taking care of our elderly. And I don't think in a state level, at a local level, if it matters what party you are. If you're not fighting for those things, then what are you fighting for?
Exactly. It's funny you mention that, because I look at Massachusetts as a whole it really doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican, because once you get down to the local level, we're all fighting for the same thing.
That's right.
Yep. But you are a Republican in a overwhelmingly Democratic state. How is it for you at the state house, because you're in the minority, getting anything you want done?
Yeah. You can try to get consensus. I've had people, sign on to stuff. And then, unfortunately, I mean, I can vote how I want, but a lot of the Democrats can't, because I'll have Democratic colleagues that'll come up and say, "Oh, that's a good bill, but I can't vote for it because the leadership's not for it."
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think you're better off maybe having a Republican there who will vote how they want, because my minority leader will never say, "Kelly, you have to vote this way." They'll say, "You vote how you want to vote." Now, he will come up to me sometimes and say, "Why did you vote that way?"
Right.
But more to ask me to be prepared in case I get the question, "Why are you voting that way?"
Okay.
But they'll never tell me how to vote. So I vote for what I think is right.
What are some of the things that made you run for office? Some of the issues here in our state that made you run for office? And are they still issues today, or have you been able to resolve those?
Well, I mean, obviously the big thing when I was running, the roads were terrible.
Right.
And so trying to, and Chapter 90 money hadn't increased in like a decade. So to try to get more money and bring that to light, in my first couple of times in there, I used to make them take roll call votes, and they would turn down when I tried to increase it by 25 million. It was at 200 million for 351 cities and towns, and it never went up. And they would vote against it. I'm like, I don't know how you get reelected voting against extra road money for your community.
We live in Massachusetts. We have some of the oldest roads in America.
Yes.
And they're, and I will say, you and I are both from Westfield. Westfield roads are fantastic.
They weren't when I got elected.
No, well, no offense, I'm not giving you all the credit for that.
No.
But I will give you, I will give Senator Vilas, I will give Mayor McCabe and the previous mayors, city council, credit where credit is due. Westfield roads, when I drive around Western Mass, Westfield roads, hands down, some of the best in the area. So kudos to all of you for that. Yeah, but for other state legislators not voting,
right,
that's mind-boggling to me.
It is.
You must hear it from your constituents. Affordability. Affordability in this state is brutal. I look at my kids. Your kids are younger than mine. My kids are in their late 20s. What they pay for rent, and they may never buy a home. And what we all pay for groceries. It's just, how do you address that on Beacon Hill to make things more affordable for people? It is a capitalistic economy, so people want, businesses can charge more to make more. I mean, that's just the way our economy is.
Right. I mean, and again, we've seen this. I mean, especially throughout the pandemic and stuff. inflation went up so much that you like it really, when you go to the grocery store, you're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
how much am I paying? And I didn't get anything, you know?
Exactly.
And yeah, so like one of the big things is you try not to let new taxes come up, like the governor was proposing the local option tax where
Right.
local municipalities could just add on taxes for different things to raise money. But it's like, no, we can't do that because the people at those levels are already hurting. You know,
Right.
I mean,
I do. The one thing I think it's important to point out, though, aside from new taxes,
right.
if people talk about cutting taxes, but taxes are revenue for the state. It's how the
yeah.
state makes money. So when people say, and I've said this to other people, we need to cut taxes. I said that's fine, but what service do you want cut?
Right.
But
Right.
but do you think there's a lot of waste in in state government? Excuse me.
Well, I mean, I think the way they prioritize their spending,
Okay.
I think there's places that could be cut. And we have a lot of nonprofit agencies that are quasi-governmental agencies,
Okay.
right? And they deal with a lot of different issues that are needed, but there's a lot of them out there. And is that where we need to prioritize our spending? Because again, to me, if you're not taking care of your schools and you're not taking care of your roads and your basic needs for people first, and then if you have something left over, you're taking care of the rest, then you're not doing it right. And I want to. Well, go ahead.
No. Is that a uniform consensus? Across Beacon Hill, or
Oh, I don't think so. I think
Really?
everybody has their pet projects, and I and I sat on the bills for things, um, but again, it just seems like that should be your starting point, right? Like I think free community college is a great concept, a great idea, but I don't know if we should have put that much money towards that without making sure that our K through 12 are not funded properly, which right now there's so many schools struggling.
Again, another weird one. Free college, but who's paying for it?
Right.
We all are.
Right. Exactly.
That's a double-edged sword.
It is.
Because people graduate high school and then with no ability to further their education. We all know you become a prosperous individual and a self-sufficient individual with the more you know.
Right.
So, and being a high school graduate versus being a college graduate, even with an associate's degree, you're much better off with an associate's degree than a
high school. Right. Absolutely.
Well, Kelly Pease, I want to thank you so very much for joining me today. A fascinating conversation. We covered a lot of ground. I've had you. This is your second time visiting the studio. Hopefully, I'll have you back at some.
I appreciate it. Thank you, and hopefully, I'll lose some weight knocking on doors here as we go into the campaign because I could use that.
It's a healthy season.
That's right. I got to go out there and start walking.
It's good seeing you, my friend.
Take care.
Bye.
This is 22 News in Focus with Patrick Berry.